Wine stood frozen, her right hand clamped over her mouth, while her left hand held the small pregnancy test tightly. Tears streamed down her cheeks, pure happiness flooding her heart. Oh my god, she whispered shakily, staring at the two pink lines. How could this be? She laughed quietly, her body trembling with emotion. She was pregnant, she was going to have a baby. She wiped her tears quickly, her mind already racing to one person, Jungkook. I have to tell Jungkook. He's going to be so happy. She sat with a bright smile, her heart beating fast. She quickly washed her hands, splashing cold water on her flushed face. Without wasting another second, she ran toward her room, her bare feet thudding softly against the floor. Grabbing her phone from the nightstand, she glanced at the clock. 10:30 p.m. There is still time. He usually comes around 11 or 12. She mumbled under her breath, biting her lip nervously. Her fingers trembled as she tapped Jungkook's name. The phone rang once, twice, and finally, on the third ring, he answered. Hello, he said, his voice sounding a little tired but sweet. Hey Jungkook, how are you? Are you free? She asked, her voice bubbling with excitement. I'm good, Wine, just working like always. He chuckled lightly. Oh, she said softly, feeling a little sad, but quickly smiling again. Can you come home a little earlier today? I have a surprise for you. She added, her voice playful and hopeful. A surprise? Sounds interesting. He said, curiosity creeping into his tone. Do you want me to bring something along? He asked kindly. No, no, just you, please, pretty please. She giggled, almost bouncing on the bed. All right, how can I say no when you ask like that? I'll be there soon. He laughed warmly. Thank you, drive safe, okay? She said sweetly, always. See you soon. He replied before hanging up. Wine hugged her pillow tightly, her cheeks hurting from smiling so much. Her heart danced with joy, imagining Jungkook's reaction. Meanwhile, Jungkook leaned back in his chair, a soft smile tugging at his lips. What could she be planning? He thought aloud, chuckling. Without wasting time, he packed up his word, grabbed his car keys, and left for home. The front door creaked open, and Jungkook stepped inside. Brushing his hair back, his eyes immediately found Wine standing near the entrance, her fingers nervously playing with the hem of her shirt. Wow, standing guard at the door. This must be serious. He joked, walking toward her. It is serious. Come quickly. She sat, grabbing his arm and pulling him into the living room. They both sank onto the couch, wine fit getting while Jungkook watched her with amusement. All right, Miss Secretive, spill it. What's the surprise? He smiled, folding his arms. Wait, drink some water first. She sat, shoving a glass into his hand. Jungkook raised an eyebrow but obeyed, sipping slowly. Okay, Jungkook. She started, her heart hammering against her ribs. You're going to be attached. She blurted out, voice shaking. Crash. The glass slipped from Jungkook's hand, shattering on the floor. Wine jumped in surprise, her hands flying to her mouth. Jungkook stood up, his face pale, confusion clouding his eyes. Wine hurriedly stood up too, her eyes brimming with tears. What did you just say? He asked, his voice low and trembling. I said, you are going to be a dad. She repeated, trying to smile through her tears. There was a heavy silence thick enough to choke on. Then Jungkook's face hardened. Whose child is this? He said, his voice sharp like a knife. Wine froze, her heart shattered into pieces at his words. Her lips quivered as she stared at him, unable to believe what she had just heard. It's yours, Jungkook. I swear, it's a miracle, isn't it? She said, her voice cracking, tears slipping down her cheeks. Jungkook looked away, clenching his fists. Wine stepped closer, reaching out with trembling hands. Wine's hand shook slightly as she stepped closer, her heart still heavy with hope. It sounds like a miracle, Cook. I'm so happy, or not you? She whispered, her voice trembling with a smile, her eyes sparkling through the tears. Jungkook stared at her blankly for a moment, then he suddenly broke the silence. Wine, 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 he said, running a hand down his face in frustration. You know, I can become a dad. He said, his voice low and broken. Wine's smile slowly faded as her heart dropped. It's been 3 years since our marriage, Wine. Don't you remember? He continued looking at her painfully. When we went to the doctor, he clearly said that I can become a father. He said, clenching his jaw. If I can't be a father, then how could you become a mother? He spoke almost choking on his words. If you're pregnant, then this child. He paused, his voice shaking. This child, it can be mine. He finished, his voice bitter and full of pain. Wine's eyes widened in shock. She stared at him as if the ground had slipped away from under her feet. Before she could think twice, her hand flew across his cheek with a loud slap. Jungkook's head turned to the side, his cheek burning from the force. How could you blame me this? She stuttered, her voice filled with disbelief and heartbreak. Don't you trust me, Jungkook? She said, her voice breaking into a sob. She looked deep into his eyes, her face full of disappointment, pain carving deep lines across her features. Jungkook looked back into her eyes, guilt instantly washing over him like a crashing wave. Listen, Wine, I didn't mean. He tried to explain, stepping closer. No, she cried, stepping back. Please don't start explaining now. I don't want to hear anything, she whispered, shaking her head. You broke my heart, Jungkook. You broke it completely. She said, her voice barely above a whisper, but each word hit harder than any slap. Without waiting for a response, she turned around and ran to her room, slamming the door behind her. Jungkook stood there frozen, staring after her with regret tearing him apart. He groaned loudly, pulling his hair in anger and guilt. He sat down heavily on the couch, burying his face in his hands, the memories hitting him like sharp knives. Flashback 1 year ago, hospital room. Jungkook sat next to Wine, nervously tapping his fingers against the chair. The doctor entered the room holding a thick file in his hands and wearing a serious expression. Mr. John, Mrs. John, I'm really sorry to say this, he began, sitting across from them. We have reviewed all the tests and reports. Jungkook, you have a medical condition that affects your ability to father a child. He said, choosing his words carefully. Jungkook's whole body stiffened and he felt wine squeeze his hand gently. There is a very slim chance, maybe 10% at most, but it's extremely rare. He added, giving them a sad smile. Jungkook lowered his head, his heart shattering into pieces. Wine, even though tears were brimming into her eyes, smiled warmly at him and kissed his hand. It's okay, Cook. I'm with you always, she whispered, leaning her forehead against his. But you deserve so much better, he whispered back, feeling broken. You are my parrot, Jungkook. We will face this together, okay? She said, her voice soft but full of strength. He had smiled that day because of her warmth, her courage, her endless love. Jungkook sat in silence, feeling the weight of his words crush him. He knew wine, loyal, cheerful, talkative, full of life. She could never betray him. She was the kind of person who would rather break herself than ever break someone's trust. And tonight he had killed that side of her. What have I done? He whispered into the empty room, tears burning his eyes. The sun peeked weakly through the curtains, but the house felt colder than ever. Wine quietly placed the breakfast on the table without saying a word. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale. It was clear she had cried the whole night. Jungkook sat at the table, hesitating before he picked up his spoon. He kept glancing at her, but she didn't even touch her plate. After a few moments, Swan stood up to leave. Her footsteps slid like a ghost. Before she could walk away, Jungkook reached out and grabbed her wrist gently. But she immediately yanked her hand away. What now? She spoke softly, not even looking at him. I'm sorry, he whispered, guilt dripping from his voice. One smiled bitterly and took a few small steps towards him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I'm sorry this time, Jungkook. I am sorry that I couldn't even earn your trust. She said, her voice hollow. Without giving him a chance to speak, she turned around and walked away. Jungkook sat frozen, pain carving deep into his chest. He suddenly stood up, frustration burning inside him. He smashed his hand against the nearby wall. Starting dripping from his knuckles, but wine didn't even flinch. The girl who once loved him more than herself didn't even turn back today. She didn't even eat anything she has to eat, he muttered under his breath, her heart aching. He walked towards the couch where Wine sat, curled up like a lifeless doll, her eyes blank. Wine, he called out gently. She didn't even look at him. Let's eat something, please, and after that we will visit the doctor. He sat trying to keep his voice steady, but Wine didn't speak. She slowly stood up, her body moving stiffly. Let's go. She sat quietly walking towards the entrance, but eat something, please. He pleaded, but Wine didn't listen. She opened the door and stepped outside. Jungkook quickly followed her, his heart sinking lower with every step. They sat silently in the waiting area, the air thick with tension. When the nurse called their names, they entered the doctor's cabin. Good to see you both. Do you have the previous report with you? The doctor asked, adjusting his glasses. Wine silently handed him the old report. The doctor examined it carefully, his brows furrowing. I'm so sorry. It seems that the reports got mixed up. He sat hesitantly. Wine's eyes widened slightly, but she stayed quiet. This report isn't Mr. Jones. Look, it has someone else's name here. The doctor pointed at the bottom of the page. Chunga quickly snatched the paper from the doctor's hands and stared at it. His heart dropped. It was true. The name written wasn't his. Shock and anger exploded inside him. Without thinking, Jungkook grabbed the doctor's collar roughly. How could you do this? He shouted, shaking him furiously. Jungkook, leave him. She cried out, trying to pull him back, but he didn't listen. Because of your mistake, I doubted my own wife. He growled, his voice raw with pain and rage. Without warning, Jungkook punched the doctor hard across the face. The doctor stumbled back, shocked, and one gasped, her eyes widened in horror. That's when she noticed the Aunt Jungkook's already injured, and it was already worse. Please stop, Cook. She pleaded, her voice cracking. As soon as Jungkook heard that nickname, Cook, something inside him broke. His eyes softened immediately, his fists unclenched. He looked at her with broken eyes, breathing heavily, realizing what he had done and what he had almost lost. The doctor quickly adjusted his coat and stood properly, wiping the from his mouth. I'm truly sorry for the inconvenience for everything. He sat, bowing his head respectfully. Wine stepped forward immediately, her voice soft. I am really sorry too, on behalf of my husband's behavior. She sat, lowering her head a little. No, no, Mrs. Jones, it's completely understandable. He said quickly, it was our fault. I deeply apologize. He added, his voice full of regret. Jungkook stood silently, his face blank. He didn't utter a single word. It felt like his soul had left his body, like he was just a hollow shell now. The car ride was filled with heavy silence. Wine sat beside him, quietly glancing at him from time to time. Jungkook's hands were gripping the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white, his eyes hollow, not a single word left his mouth, not even a breath too heavy. Wine walked ahead into the house slowly, her heart aching for him. Jungkook followed behind her, his footsteps dragging, his head hanging low. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the house. Wine immediately turned around, panic shooting through her chest. Jungkook, she screamed, rushing towards him. Jungkook had fallen to his knees, his hands shaking, his headboard. Tears were streaming down his face uncontrollably. I'm so sorry, Wine. I'm so ashamed. He choked out between sobs. I should have trusted you. He cried, his voice breaking. Without thinking twice, Wine dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around him tightly. His face buried itself into her neck, his body shaking with heavy sobs. She held him firmly, one hand patting his back soothingly. Jungkook, now stop, don't cry, I can understand. She whispered into his ear, her own eyes filling with tears, but Jungkook couldn't stop. He clung to her like a lost child, sobbing harder. But I should die. I don't deserve you. He cried out. You deserve someone better. He whimpered against her skin. One smiled sadly, hugging him even tighter. Yes, of course, I deserve better, she said softly. Wine pulled back slightly and cupped his face, making him look at her. But I chose you, Jungkook. I choose to love you. Even if you make mistakes, even if you hurt me, my heart still belongs to you. She whispered, her thumb wiping away his endless tears. I don't deserve this love. I don't deserve you. He repeated brokenly, shaking his head. Then earn it again, Jungkook, she said, her voice steady. Fight for me, fight for us. She added, giving him a small, encouraging smile. Jungkook nodded against her, tears still rolling down, but his heart finally finding a small ray of hope through the darkness.